I'm Lucy Shea, I'm the CEO of Futerra, and I couldn't be more excited about this panel. After 20 years of working on sustainability strategies and communications, I can honestly say I think this climate solutions framework is one of the unlocks we need at this moment in order to scale climate solutions and displace the high fossil fuel, high carbon emitting. Welcome. Come on, that's just perfect timing. We're just still on the intro. Hi. Displays high carbon emission products and services with these climate solutions. All right, so Kaya, that was great timing because I was about to introduce the panel. So yeah, what we'll do is we're going to start with a little Q&A with Johan Falk, who's the CEO and co-founder of Exponential Roadmap. And then we have this stellar panel of practitioners, climate solutions companies, academics, and so we've got Reid, who's the Sustainability Director, EMA of Oatly. We've got Lina, I'm going to get this right, Håkansdotter. Thanks. Chief Sustainability and Corporate Affairs Officer at Stegra. We've got Piera, Patrizio, Head of Research, Science-Based Targets Initiative. We should have one more panelist coming, Zainab, who's the Asia Pacific Campaign Manager for Equal Rights. So that's right, leave a space for Zainab. And we have Axelsson, who's the Head of Policy and Partnerships and Research Fellow, Oxford Net Zero, University of Oxford. Could we please give them a warm round of applause? All right, so moving to the content. Johan, why have you developed the Climate Solutions Framework? Ta-da, with the slides.
Yes.
Is it, yeah, good. No, tech team, we need some slides.
Okay.
Yeah, we got it, thanks.
Climate Solutions Framework. Well, firstly, about the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, we bring together leading transformers and disruptors with the common mission to halve emissions by 2030 through exponential climate action and solutions. So that's who we are. And the foundation for our initiative is a carbon law that we basically need to halve emissions every decade from 2020 to halve by 2030 and every decade after that, while protecting nature and scaling up carbon removals. But we know that we are still moving in the wrong direction. One reason for that, as far as we see it, is that we're not scaling up the solutions which will shift out the fossil economy sufficiently fast and exponentially. So that's really the reason that we also need to put the emphasis on the solutions which can actually shift out the fossil economy in order to scale them faster.
That's great. Now,
yes.
You're in the right place because, as the flywheel shows, it's, not anything that we're pushing down anyone's throat, solutions and answers and all these things. But can you build out with a little bit more definition about what this framework is?
Yeah, and the reason, if we should be able to recognize these companies and incentivize companies, we need some kind of independent framework. That's a background. So we can also validate, is this a climate solution or a climate solutions company? And that's the reason why we started this job, maybe, I think it was 1 to 2 years ago, together with Oxford Net Zero, Kaya is here, and some other partners. So we have also quite thoroughly reviewed this particular framework to put it into place, and released the first version quite recently. And it's the basic principle, it actually follows the scientific carbon law, which was defined by Johan 2017. So to be able to qualify as a climate solution, you need to have a significant lower carbon footprint through the life cycle compared to the market average solution. So we put the threshold as more than 50%, preferably 80, 90%, etc., to be able to define such a solution as a climate solution. In addition to that, it needs to follow strict guardrails, of course. And it's also so that companies also need to have net zero targets, intermediate targets, and other basic principles in place. So it's important to keep it firm, but also with the idea of simplicity.
Great. Do you have any more slides actually showing the criteria? Let's have a look at those. Great. Let's have a quick look at that and then the following one as well.
Yeah, so that's a basic principle, that you have to stay under this particular curve. So of course, there is a ratcheting over time. So if you introduce a solution, let's say with 60% less carbon footprint over the complete life cycle, you still need to have reduction targets to stay under the curve continuously. Yes.
Right. And then the criteria for what makes up the different types of climate solutions. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
These are a couple of examples. I won't go into that practically, but for example, an electrical vehicle might qualify as a climate solution, but it won't qualify maybe in 2 or 3 years. It needs to be developed with low fossil material or near zero steel, and it's also possibly need to be shared as well in order to follow that particular curve as an example. So it will continuously, we need to strengthen the criteria over time to follow the curve.
So, and it's not just theoretical, is it? We've got Lina here from Stegra, and Stegra is the first company to qualify, I believe. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to come to you in a moment and ask you about why you wanted to become a climate solutions company. But Johan, now, is there an announcement that we would like to make today?
Well, also Oatly is joining the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, which is
that is just brilliant.
And a great, so we just announced that. And which is focusing on providing climate solutions according to this framework.
Great. Okay, so that is fabulous. Thank you for setting us up with the foundations, Johan. So, Caroline, I'm going to go to you as the newest company on the block with this status. Why did you want to qualify as a climate solutions company?
Great question. So
we didn't rehearse this.
No, we didn't. But let's just start with, firstly, Oatly. We make oat milk. We are a purpose-led company. Our mission is to make it easier for people to eat well and live healthy lives without recklessly taxing the planet's resources. So simply put, it can't be healthy for you if it's not healthy for the planet. And we believe that our product, our oat milk, is a mechanism of changing the food system for the better. But we can have the belief that we think our product's a mechanism of change, it's so much better than cow's milk, but having now been assessed by the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, which is a partner of the UN Race to Zero, against this criteria, and kind of having that stamp of approval that our products, our oat milk, are climate solutions in the category of milk, it just really brings us like kind of really good credibility. And so what it actually means is, depending on the market and where we are selling our oat milk is between 51 to 73% less impactful than the market, and that's the milk market. So it's not compared to cow's milk, it's comparing ourselves to cow's milk and actually other plant-based alternatives in the market today. So we really feel like that's a really first step in providing that credibility, and we're also really happy to be engaged in this discussion around climate frameworks and the climate solutions companies and products, because today, we are have climate solutions products, and they need to scale at speed if we are to reach net zero. And to do that, we're high growth. And that also means that our absolute emissions in the short term are probably going to increase as we displace cow's milk. And so we really like that the framework is acknowledging the need for intensity reduction targets to make space for the growth needed for climate solutions products and companies.
So hold that thought. Kaya, when I come to you, I'm going to ask you to expand on that, if I may. But first of all, Lina, over to you. Why did you want to become a climate solutions company? And can you expand a bit on some of the benefits you might have seen? Like, do your customers care? Are they interested?
Yeah, for sure. And perhaps I should start with telling what Stegra is, because a lot of you might not know, but our name up until last week was H2 Green Steel. And we are starting the first green steel mill in the world, actually, building it right now up in the northern part of Sweden. And in this mill, we will produce 2.5 million tons of green steel, which has 95% lower emissions compared to the traditional steel-making route. So that's a lot less emissions. And of course, it's really important for us to be able to advocate this, and also, of course, to get the investments needed to be able to build this factory. And our investors, they have raised concern, of course. They say, why aren't you SBTi? Why don't you have targets? Well, we have 95% lower emissions. That's a target. But this stamp, with being a climate solution company registered with the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, is a clear evidence for our investors that we are contributing in a substantial way.
That's great. That's fabulous to hear. And have you found similarly, do customers, are they interested? Is it something you're getting asked about?
Yeah, great question. First, customers, we don't mean people, consumers. Consumers don't care about climate solutions. Consumers want delicious, tasty upgrades in their life and their diet. But when we talk about customers, we are a supplier to big retailers around the world that sell products to then you. They also often request that customers should have SBTi climate reduction targets. And so that doesn't work for us either, because we also want to grow similarly to H2 Green Steel. So again, it's really great to be having this space and this acknowledgement that there is another type of company that is challenging the status quo, and there is space for that. And we really hope that customers start to understand the impacts, the positive impacts we can have for them.
Some of the favourite emails I've seen in recent years has been when our corporate partners, hello, welcome, I will introduce you in a moment.
Sure,
that's very good. Thank you so much. When our corporate partners have shared the emails that they've had from procurement teams saying, I'd like to explain why you haven't set your near-term science-based target yet. It's like, that's coming from procurement, that is fantastic. But to give another framework to have that questioning on, I think is great.
Yes.
Okay, so please do welcome Zainab B. Have I pronounced your name?
Yes, it's correct.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Zainab, you're the Asia Pacific Campaign Manager of Equal Rights.
Yes.
So we've just been getting going with a bit of a definition and foundations about the solutions framework, and Stegra and Oatly, who's the newest climate solutions company, have just been talking about why they wanted to join. And Kaya, I'll turn to you and then to Zainab. Give us a little bit about what you see the importance of this framework and what it can unlock, and why we need a definition such as this.
Yeah, so why name climate solutions? And first of all, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you both for the work that you do. Thank you all for the work that you do. I'm looking over at Abe Lincoln. The best way to predict the future is to create it. There is some evidence that shows when you name something, you can actually create an identity. Censusing is a good example of this. There are examples of times when a census names a group of people, and then a previously not known identity was created as a result of that in the population. And what we're trying to do is create the identity of a climate solutions provider so that companies can live that as part of their wholesale business model strategy. And we need business model innovation from brown to green, and also green startups. And so those are the two types of climate solutions that we defined in this framework. The other reason that we needed to define climate solutions is because of some really exciting innovations in the standards and policy landscape. I just came from an event, which is why I rushed in here excited, because there's amazing work going on thinking about how we meet our net zero targets, and thinking about how we're probably going to need to band together, especially on scope 3, through these value chain initiatives. And these value chain initiatives will be are aggregating demand and investing specifically in green products that probably come with a green premium. Now, if all of this effort is going into creating a transition finance market to decarbonize value chains, but we don't have good definitions for what those products are, then we've wasted quite a lot of energy. And so we need to have very high quality standards at a sector level as to what a climate solution is, but we thought we would start at a general level with this framework.
Fab. And actually, Zainab, if I may, I'm going to quickly go to Piera, because I know, Piera, in terms of that, you were talking about the need for this for financial institutions. So please expand on that and tell us anything else in terms of why we need this type of definition right now.
Yes. Well, first of all, I come from SBTI, which was nominated multiple times here, but the mission of SBTI is to actually help corporates, but also financial institutions setting targets that are aligned with science, and also to educate companies and financial institutions to understand what actually they can do in order to reach these targets. And I think that's where we see the role of climate solution, and we see how important is the definition of climate solution. I was actually talking just now about the fact that climate solution is now becoming a brand, like the term itself. Like, I'm an engineer as a background, and I used to call these low carbon technologies, low carbon products, but the fact that now also SBTI in the consultation draft of the financial institution net zero standard now will ask financial institutions to green their portfolio by investing in climate solution, it's very powerful. And so I think the framework is going to be very important, and I'm really looking forward to see also how this will evolve over time, because I think it's going to be crucial also to take into account the ecosystems where all of these different climate solutions operate, because we are talking about green steel and oat milk, like very different products. They have very different challenges. And so it's going to be very important to, as we mentioned, to evolve this framework over time.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we will come back to that. So again, hold that thought. Zainab, I'm going to turn to you. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself a little bit and tell us about where you see the need for this climate solutions definition, and again, what you can see it unlocking.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here. I'm Zainab. I'm leading the Asia Pacific Campaign Management for an organization called Equal Right. And what we're trying to do is basically how do we solve the problem of inequality and climate change together. So a lot of our work goes into mobilizing climate finance for the Global South. Now the issue arises, even though the money is coming with a lot of difficulty, even if we mobilize it, how do we make sure that we are funding the right projects? And here the climate solutions come into place. And we do go by the vision that the more you define something, the better you will be able to solve it. Let us just take the example of climate finance. The UNFCCC framework is still not able to define it, and look at us now. We are yet to mobilize the fund that we need for energy transition, and we are unable to do it. And even if we get the money, even if we are able to mobilize the fund, $5 trillion for the Global South, how do we make sure that it goes to the right place? How do we make sure that the penetration is correct? How do we make sure that it reaches the right people? And again, the most vulnerable people, those who really need it, the most affected people and areas, and how do we make sure that this transition happens in as much redistributive manner, as much just manner. So I think this is where it is very important to define climate solutions.
I think that's just a fantastic build out of how it needs to be applied in the real world and linking to the need for a just transition. So thank you for that. And Kai, I'm going to bring you back in as well, because I could see you nodding enthusiastically at that. And you mentioned before a couple of areas that we want to encourage climate solutions in. So I wonder if you could respond to Zainab, and particularly that bit around the two types, the brown to green and the scaling green startups, basically.
Yeah, I'd love to tell a story about why I was motivated. In addition to Johan's incredibly persuasive invitation to work on this framework he's clearly been thinking about for a long time. But for me, the light bulb came on as to why we needed this in reference to a just transition and an understanding of different development models and green development models. So I was working on the International Standard Organization's Net Zero Standard, and the chair of that standard process, Masamba Choi, he said, I'm not chairing this process unless we give a space to companies, particularly those from developing context, who want to be part of the green solution. Instead, we were just defining net zero as a reduction pathway and not a green growth opportunity. And when you're talking to a continent that represents less than 1% of global historical emissions, it's pretty tone deaf to say reduce alone. And so I was a little late to this, but I listened over time, and it really is that which motivated this framework, and I think can hopefully enable a lot of excitement from all different political economies.
Great. Absolutely great. All right, so that's kind of round one of the questions. Now now we said solutions, answers only, but we are going to look a little bit at the barriers before going on to the solutions. So, Johan, I'm going to go back to you. We've identified some of the barriers already, financial, allocation of capital, etc. What are some of the other ones that we've got that are preventing this rapid scale to just climate solutions, and what can be some of the solutions to that?
Yeah. One thing is obviously that we don't have the policies in place, of course. We have blocking policies which actually subsidize the fossil solutions and the business as usual solutions. So it's a big disadvantage for the new solutions, which can radically shift out the fossil economy. So that's really a big blocker. And I think it's important that the companies of tomorrow, we get them around the table, basically, because today it's primarily the big existing companies which are around the table. And there is a risk, of course, that they like to protect, number one, protect their market share, obvious. Number two, say, well, it's impossible, you can't go that fast, that's impossible. I would say a lot is possible if you bring in the innovators, the entrepreneurs, the disruptors around the table, and give them a place and show actually what is achievable. So I would say from a policy viewpoint, we need to bring in all these new companies which has an opportunity to contribute to global net zero and show it is possible actually. And it's so important as part of this value chain transformation, Kaya, that you talked about, because it's all now about value chain transformation to achieve net zero upstream and downstream. You need to get the innovators in there. You can't just rely on your existing suppliers and customers. You need to sort of break up your value chains, go for rapid rethinking. So there are a couple of arguments.
Great, absolutely fab. And arguably it is what business does best, is actually the entrepreneurial and the innovation approach rather than just the reductionist approach. Piera, I'm going to ask the same question to you, if I may. I'm going to come back this way, so fair warning.
So I would absolutely echo what was just mentioned. And I would also add that, again, I think one important thing to remember is also differentiation. Like, what is important is to understand that there are some solutions that could work somewhere and that do not work in others. And so having this level of transparency also in this framework to understand, like, for instance, that also when you talk about just transition, right? Green steel, it's fundamental and can work in a region like Sweden where you have access to low carbon energy, and it can really work and you can bring all together, but it might not work in other countries. So I think having this level of like really evolving this framework to understand all the different complexity and the barriers that I still think they are kind of like very specific also to the different solution. It's going to be very important. Because there might be that some products actually do not need that much capital, right? It's more about social acceptance, what other really require investment to be unlocked.
Yeah, okay, totally agree. Lina, I wonder if you could talk about the barriers and solutions, but If you're happy to, maybe share if you had any barriers inside the business about adopting this framework and any solutions to that. I mean, if you're happy to.
Yeah, sure. What's most important for us to be able to kick off our investment is actually policy, of course, and it's the carbon price. And in Europe, we have an emission trading scheme that hits us as a heavy industry, steel sector, and that is what makes this investment possible. However, to your point, Johan, we have really seen that the incumbents, they have tried to hinder this price signal in the market. And now, 15 years after we launched the emission trading scheme, now we have a price that actually makes investments viable. So we really do need to get the innovators, the entrepreneurs, the scale-ups into the policy discussions. And I think that's one important part for us to be part in the Exponential Roadmap Initiative as well, because today we only see the incumbents and their federations and organizations around the table, and they tend to make it not as ambitious as we would want to.
Yes, that pressure is real.
Yeah.
Okay, great call out. Caroline.
Yes, so for us, it's all about empowering a plant-based revolution. We need the food system to change, and that's not a small feat. I mean, the food system, 1/3 of all emissions, half of that from the animal-based sector. We all need to eat. Food is also very cultural. It's part of our identity. So we have a lot to achieve going forward. Policy, regulation, nutritional guidelines, school food, it was all developed for another era. And that's the past, before things like climate change were thought about. And so, I mean, our biggest barrier is really policy changing that actually is future, looking forward and taking into account both nutritional and environmental needs. And it's about coming together, and we are up against really big incumbents. The meat and dairy industry, there's been some really interesting papers published recently speaking about, you know, how they are kind of derail, deny, deploy, and how they're fighting against climate action. So we are up against a big machine. So coming together with other like-minded companies is what we need to do. Oatly ourselves we're quite small, but we actually have a very large voice, and so we do everything from advocating for climate labeling, because you should be able to know the impact of the foods you choose. It might not steer your choices, but at least you should be aware so you can make conscious decisions, to all the way to kind of challenging the dairy industry on big billboards and being fun about it. But it's really about using our voice to challenge the outdated landscape, the policy landscape and industrial landscape that we're facing.
And you do use all of your real estate on your packs to do that as well, don't you?
Yes.
In an amusing way.
Yes.
Okay, Kaya. Barriers that you see in solutions that this climate solutions framework can bring?
I don't think that we have, I mean, to your point about policy, subsidies are almost all pointing in unhealthy directions for planet and people. We have, I guess, this is on us as people who work on standards and policy. We've yet to help companies set KPIs and a percentage of their products and services that they sell to be climate solutions. And I don't know how we think we're going to get to 100% or close to 100% emission reduction without also scaling up those services, because what you're selling is someone else's scope 1 or 2. So yeah, I think it has, I like to think about what we can do. And so what I'm working on is helping the companies that I do research with and talk to regularly set those targets, and then they'll buy from each other as well. And also, I think, working on the standards so that we can really encourage it and put that, I think, incredibly positive frame on the climate movement.
Yeah, it's great. I love that, building the community of practice through your work and encouraging everyone to buy from each other. That's great. Zainab, could you tell us about some of the solutions that barriers and solutions that you can see?
For sure. So to give a bit of more context about the kind of work we are trying to do, so we are coming up with a policy solution called cap and share, very different from cap and trade. Again, the idea is to charge the carbon. According to IPCC, it should be $135 per ton of carbon dioxide emissions. So, and kind of try to mobilize funds to use it within the Global South for the transition. And in 2023 itself, within Asia Pacific, there were around 8 million people who were directly affected by the climate crisis through storms, through hazards. And yes, it is still not convincing enough to get the finance for these countries as reparations, as transition. So having this will help us build the credibility. Yes, the money is going the right way. And again, it will help us get the money towards the Global South, help us fund those renewable projects and our infrastructure again, because we are still in a very developing stage. We are still working on our infrastructure. We do not want to do it wrong again. But then again, one of the barriers I see is definitely corruption. Within the Global South, within the governance structure, there have been many instances of corruption, and it has been difficult to navigate the governance structure and reaching the right people and reaching the right projects. So this could be another issue. Yeah.
Great. Okay. I'm going to throw it open to the floor. So we've got a little bit of time for questions, and also panelists, we can also ask questions from each other as well. But let's get have we got the roving mic going round, tech team? Thank you so much. And anyone want to ask a question? You might be at the start of your journey and thinking, can I do this? With any tips on becoming a climate solutions company? You might want to ask from our broad range of academic and practitioners. So any hands up? Otherwise, Kaya, we're going to be asking each other questions. Over here, thank you. Right.
Thank you. Hey, I'm Tyler Cole. I'm Director of Climate Solutions at TESS. We're an e-fuel producer that's both a climate startup and transitioning brown to green industries with low carbon gases. My question is for Oatly and, is it Stegra? I apologize. I knew it as H2, green steel before. What's the expectation, the process of joining this group, and maybe for Johan as well? What's the plan for the future as more and more companies look to, I don't know, is it a certification? Is it something, what's the expectation of startups that want to join?
Yeah, I can go first. From our side, we hope that we will get a lot of attraction to this, and more companies joining, of course, because one voice is not loud enough. We need to be several. And Johan, you're working on the new framework and the certification process. So there are clear guidelines what you need to achieve to be able to join.
Yeah, exactly. Feel the same. And then just maybe building on, there's also, I really like that the framework's built up that, by 2030, you need to be at least 50% less impactful, but then the guidance is 75% less impactful, and then 90 by, so it's really giving you that pathway. So internally, you can really be building your roadmaps to, if you want to continue to be a climate solution going ahead, which was what we were doing at Oatly.
So I can add to that. So we started to validate the framework with the concrete companies. So prior to that, we did the review, and we also, when we decided for the first version, I would say we gone for simplicity, because some of the feedback from the actors was, if you do it too complicated, it will not fly, we will not be able to scale it. So there is a fine balance between sharpness and simplicity, and also speed, that we need to get things out and start to test it to get feedback, to applying an agile approach, which is our thinking. We think it's pretty solid, yes. Is it perfect? No, probably not, absolutely not. But our thinking is we take in the companies, we validate according to these principles, which are pretty sharp as far as I would see it. And now we're looking at, of course, what is the feedback and how that could be developed over time if it requires more capacity and so on. Yeah. So we are in the starting phase, I would say. But we also created a group of a number of companies just to be able to, similar to Stegra and Oatly, which can actually provide feedback on implementation of the principles. And I do expect that we will, of course, tune it over time, but we need to keep certain stability as well. Yeah. But it's important with an independent validation for a company, because otherwise the argument would be that you can claim anything. And the key point is, well, we're following this framework. It doesn't say that it's perfect, but this needs to be transparent basically. So anyone can criticize it or have a view on it if it's sufficiently sharp or if it's too sharp.
Yeah, it's important to start, isn't it? It's important to get something out there. Did either of you want to come in on that as well, on the expectations for next steps?
I just wanted to say how fantastic is it that our first question was, how can I be a climate solutions company? More of that, please. And so I guess an ask for all of you, if you work for an organization, do you think it could be a climate solutions company? If not, why not? Will you go back to your organization and question that? And if not, do you think there's a potential that in a net zero world, your products or services could be stranded? I think this really ties to CSRD and the kind of regulatory reporting requirements that we're starting to see companies have to submit. And I know that those can be controversial because it's a burden to submit those, but the point is that it's an exercise to help companies look at not just the risk, but also the opportunity. And so this is not just in the land of many initiatives, like an initiative that is divorced from or contradictory to others. It's very much in line with regulation that should cover about 50% of jurisdictions around the world within the next few years.
And it should actually, if you tackle both of these things, they help each other, don't they? Actually, taking your climate solutions approach is actually going to enable you and help you with your compliance requirements as well. So it's good to see it's all nested together. More questions? Okay, we've got 3 here. We'll take 3 at once.
Hi, my name is Cambria. I'm a sustainability consultant working with food and beverage companies primarily, Qantas. I'm going to sneak in 2 questions. Sorry. So one is, I look forward to reading the framework in detail, but I'm seeing, the one metric I've seen so far is CO2e. Is nature coming into the frame of evaluating a climate solutions product, a climate solutions company, because that's obviously integral and we're beyond the point of being able to look through carbon tunnel vision. Second question is, I was really struck, I work with companies and help them set science-based targets all the time, and I was really struck by hearing from you both a little bit of maybe it's not feasible to set a near-term target because of high growth. Is this seen maybe as an alternative to setting a science-based target for a high-growth company? Yep. How do you make sure you are indeed taking over market share, replacing, dairy, for example? How are you ensuring you're taking over market share and not just adding to absolute emissions?
Right. Okay, 2 great questions. We're going to keep going. We're going to gather all the questions. Good. Nature and high growth and an alternative to SBTI. Yep.
Hi, my name is Claire. I'm with First Matter. We do climate tech commercialization strategy. My question is around how this relates to, or how companies, specifically Johan, I think you might be able to answer this, how companies who are not necessarily climate solutions focused, but they have products that they're launching that are climate solutions. We see this a lot with kind of large corporates that have certain divisions that are focused on climate solutions, how they would play into it, or do you look at the whole company, and it needs to be like a holistic assessment? So that's my question.
That is great. So a product versus company approach and how that works. Thank you. These questions are great, everyone. And then, hi.
Yeah, hi, my name is Lynn, and I'm also a decarbonization planning consultant. And I'm wondering about, first of all, I work with a lot of businesses that do see the opportunity and the value of going low carbon in their products, and they're frustrated by the lack of standards, to be able to, define their product that way. So I applaud this discussion. This is great. But I'm also wondering, out of some of the existing mechanisms that are there, how does this exponential roadmap and other things play into things like the environmental product declarations and the North American library that's being built, and some of the green buying and procurement standards that are already out there for government and businesses?
Great. Another great question. So, Johan, I'm going to start with you, and if you could start with the last question, if you don't mind, but also build out a little bit to how this sits within other frameworks And then we'll go around the team with the question on, you can take nature as well if you want, because I know it is there. So why don't you take those two to start?
That's really good questions. So we see this as complementary to other frameworks. It's of course complementary to SBTI, particularly SBTI creates a very strong demand and pressure from particularly the large corporations to drive down their value chain emissions, which requires these type of solutions. So from that perspective, it is very complementary as far as I see it. We're not here talking about quantifying avoided emissions. There are other initiatives and framework looking into how many million tons you could avoid. So that's also complementary as far as we see it. This is more about qualifying your solutions. And then of course you can look at taxonomy and some other frameworks, which we also link to. So there is a need, as we identified, that we should create that map of the frameworks basically and how they link to each other and how they complement each other. So that's definitely something we will do. We don't want to reinvent anything from our perspective, and then in the next phase see, can we influence some of the standards depending on which direction it will take. So that is the thinking. And on the nature, yes, we started of course here with the climate as we're leading with climate, but in the guardrails we're applying the similar principles as from the taxonomy in terms of guardrails related to nature.
Yeah.
It's a good point. It could be further developed, yes.
Right. I'm really sorry. I realised we're running out of time. I was like, we've got loads of questions from the audience, and then the really great questions, but it all sped up. So, Piera, do you want to have a quick closing point on the SBTI and high growth piece? I mean, you are from SBTI, so I feel we should ask you the SBTI question.
No, well, first of all, I really appreciate what you just mentioned and the fact that I think we need to have complementary framework, right? SBTI cannot solve all the problems, right? And it's very much welcome that we have more than one framework, and I think in an ideal world we can all align on this language and taxonomy, because what we are trying to solve is so difficult and so challenging that SBTI never had the presumption of being the solution. So that's great. And yeah, with regard to high growth company, I mean, what's the question? Shall I open up into the carbon budgets?
No, sorry, right. we're at time. We'll do another session on the carbon budget.
Exactly.
Thank you, though, for checking. So, very quickly, Lina and Caroline, on products versus whole company. So, do you also look at product certification, or have you taken the whole company approach with this?
So we did both when we've done the assessment recently. Right now, we looked at the product because we're in the process of working out our long-term reduction targets and net zero, which means we couldn't be the company. Hopefully we will be. So it works for both company and product. Right. Yeah, and I just want to add, I think it's also really important, even though it's not covered in the climate solutions framework, I think it's really important as a company as ours with a purpose to be able to really actually see, are we actually having that positive impact in the world? So we are doing avoided emissions based on a methodology developed with you at Qantas.
Well, there we are. Great. Lina, did you want to quickly cover that?
No, for us as a company, it's only for the company. Yeah.
Right.
Nothing else matters.
Kaya, I saw you noting down. Which of the questions you want to take?
The green procurement one.
Yeah.
We did actually speak with Ceres, who is working on the 2 green procurement bills that have advanced, and they really liked this, but I think I need to check if they incorporated it.
Okay, good. We have an action point from this panel, which is always really useful. And Zainab, do you want to take any of the questions around green procurement and how that might sit?
I'm more interested in the product versus company.
Yeah.
So again, the majority of the companies now are more interested in solving about, are you on the right track or are we on the right path? But the correct question should be, is the pace correct? And considering the situation right now, we actually do not have time. So I guess it would be much better to focus on products, and then it will also eliminate a lot of greenwashing that is happening. Sure.
Yeah. We've had whole sessions on that as well. All right, can we please give the panelists an enormous round of applause?